Borderlands, Risk of Rain, and Hades walk into a bar. There should be a story or build up to a joke that comes next, but I'm gonna skip ahead to the punchline. And out walks Roboquest, my latest roguelite obsession. I've had my eye on this game for quite a while, after it landed on my radar with its flashy What is Roboquest trailer released back in 2022. As a huge fan of roguelites/roguelikes, my curiosity was immediately piqued by the idea of a first-person take on the genre, with its incredible visuals catching my eye in particular. After hearing more and more buzz as time went on, I went ahead and picked it up back in May, fully intent on jumping in even though the game was still in early access. But I found myself in the same situation I imagine many of you have over the course of 2023, having way too many games to play and not nearly enough time to actually play them. Before I knew it, the year was almost over, and nearly all of its major releases were in the rearview mirror, which provided the perfect excuse to finally dive into Roboquest when the game hit its 1.0 release on November 7th. After roughly 20 hours spent slaying evil robots and beefing up my own mechanical menace, I am so glad this didn't slip off my radar, because the game is an absolute blast, and has quickly cemented itself as my go-to jump in and jump back out time sink that will stay installed on my PC for a long time to come. Roboquest is a self-proclaimed FPS roguelite, but that description certainly doesn't do justice to the excellent package the developer Rise Up Studios has delivered. For those unfamiliar with the genre, while there's still some debate over what separates a roguelite from a roguelike, most would agree the former is a less punishing spin on the latter. In either case, the idea behind any rogue-inspired title revolves around gradually progressing through a series of arenas while under extreme duress from enemies and the environment, often at the same time, and facing off against difficult bosses in between. Games made in this style are punishing, heart-pounding affairs that keep you on the edge of your seat as you grind out run after run for dozens, if not hundreds of hours, even after conquering your first full completion. The primary difference between these two variations is that roguelites allow players to carry over some form of progress between runs, but still kicking you back to the beginning each time you get hit with the death screen. Roguelikes, on the other hand, will often send you back with nothing but personal experience to show after your latest attempt, and all those that came before it. Roboquest falls firmly into the roguelike category in that regard, and while its scope may not match some of its contemporaries, it still provides an unquestionably satisfying core gameplay loop that hooks you right from the start and will keep you coming back for more of its frenetic action time and time again. Keeping a game in early access allows the developer to smooth out performance and squash bugs prior to a full release, and Roboquest has clearly benefited from that extra time in the oven. Its settings menu is perfectly fine, providing all of the options you'd expect to see in a title like this without leaving anything important out of the equation. Performance while running on my machine was absolutely stellar. With frames capped at 144, my i9-10900 and NVIDIA 3080 maintained a rock-solid frame rate without a single dip or drop in performance. While Roboquest's cel-shading art style helps fuel that excellent showing, there's also a lot of action and movement taking place on screen, and no matter how many projectiles were flying around or how fast I was speeding through each arena, the game never missed a beat, and I'd expect a similar output even on machines with older or less powerful components as well. The lone performance issue I noted was a weird hitching that only occurred during the loading screens that transitioned you from one location to the next. The game would stutter and chop for a second or two, then go right back to the flawless performance I mentioned earlier. Maybe this was a weird issue with my setup, or more likely a small tweak the devs need to make in the back end, but certainly not a knock against in-game performance, and no crashes or major issues is always a win in my book. When it comes to gameplay issues, I only noticed two, both of which were also relatively minor. The first was what seemed to be some potential mismatches in item descriptions. We'll dive into this more later, but in some cases, the stats and effects listed didn't match up with their actual in-game performance. This only came up once or twice, and didn't impact my gameplay or builds in any meaningful way. The second, and more noticeable issue was with boss awareness, in a couple of instances where they seemed to suddenly lose track of me and would stop targeting my character with their attacks. These seemed to stem from detection issues rooted in their vision cones or spatial awareness, when I'd back up too far and cause them to no longer register my presence. This was the most off-putting problem I encountered, but it only came up once or twice and lasted for mere seconds before they snapped out of it. With nothing on the technical side to hamper your enjoyment, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of what makes Roboquest so great, kicking things off with the sights and sounds you'll experience during your jaunts through this beautifully constructed world. To put it plainly, Roboquest's visuals are immaculate, and a strong soundscape complements them perfectly during each and every step you take through its exotic arenas. The game's cel-shading style, which many will immediately associate with the Borderlands series' signature artistic approach, offers a simple yet beautiful presentation of its characters, enemies, weapons, and effects. Rise Up have done an excellent job of infusing this into every nook and cranny. You'll battle across a wide array of distinct vistas, and while some of these spaces do share design aspects, mostly because they form a contiguous path leading you onward, each manages to differentiate itself enough to still feel unique and handcrafted. Even as I ran through these spaces over and over, they never lost that sense of beauty, and I often found myself pausing to take in a new sight or angle I hadn't spotted on my last romp through that particular locale. Similarly, the NPCs you'll encounter and enemies you'll face off against all feature their own eye-popping designs, ranging from hilarious and wonky to downright menacing and creepy. Even the rank-and-file cannon fodder you'll be mowing down by the dozens manage to look cool, but these wacky models truly shine when you encounter unique adversaries and bosses, which feature some truly inventive and eye-catching looks. The vast majority of your playtime will be spent cutting down hordes of foes from a first-person perspective, but when you are treated to one of the few narrative cutscenes sprinkled throughout, a similarly impressive style is clearly on display. The transition to slow-paced 2D animation doesn't miss a beat, and the same distinctive art style carries over between the two mediums, providing a vibrant breakdown of story events as you progress through the plot. The one case where this art style falters is with the game's primary NPC, Max, who we'll touch on more later. Don't get me wrong, she looks perfectly fine most of the time, especially during those cutscenes. Just don't stare into her eyes for too long, because they're downright freaky looking at times. Roboquest's visuals are breathtaking across the board, but its audio design and soundtrack are simply fantastic. I could tell my ears were in for a treat as soon as I hit the main menu, and every second after was filled with a sublime symphony of gunfire, sound effects, and music, all of which elevate your robot rampages to an entirely new level. The game's soundtrack is immaculate. There's simply no other way to put it. Each area features background music perfectly designed to complement the hectic battles taking place within its walls, caverns, canals, or wherever else you might find yourself caught up in a frantic combat encounter. I would sometimes stop for a minute just to jam out and enjoy the incredible beats backing up Roboquest's gameplay, and it joins a select few other titles like Hi-Fi Rush where I need a full soundtrack for jamming out on my own time. When a game's music sticks with you that much, especially when you aren't even playing it, that's a good indication of the team behind those tunes doing their job right, and that's certainly true here. So, we have solid performance, minimal bugs, and fantastic presentation, all of which is great. But what about the gameplay? Continuing that strong trend, the experience at Roboquest's core is also excellent, offering enjoyable gunplay, simple yet engaging build crafting, and solid enemy design to keep you coming back for more, just like a good roguelite should. Kicking things off with its story, the plot in Roboquest is serviceable, which is pretty much all you need from a title in this genre. You play as an old, abandoned guardian robot who has the good fortune of being discovered by a young scavenger named Max, who fixes you up and gets you back on your metal feet. Soon enough, you're good as new, and you set off together on a quest to save humanity from their desperate existence in Earth's barren desert. Along the way, you find yourself at odds with an evil AI, Iris, who's dead set on stopping you from achieving this goal. Despite her interference, your spunky tag team continues battling towards a better future for humanity and taking down Iris along the way. It doesn't come close to the emotional impact of Hades or the unnerving mystery of Returnal, but it does set the stage for your journey and provide a goal to chase down, sprinkled with plenty of lighthearted fun and friendship along the way. The game also kicks off with a nice little tutorial sequence that introduces core concepts like acquiring weapons, defeating enemies, collecting health pickups, and so on. It will even use your performance during this intro to suggest an appropriate difficulty level. Hard for me, which was what I started out with, and we'll touch on what selections I recommend towards the end of the review. As you fight against Iris, you'll also take down plenty of her minions, and to defeat them you're going to need some serious firepower. Thankfully, Roboquest has plenty to offer on that front, and its gunplay, weapon design, and combat systems are perfectly suited for a first-person roguelite. Guns doesn't even begin to cover the dazzling array of weapons available in Roboquest. I was immediately floored by the massive number of unique options to choose from, and my awe only grew as I spent more time with the game's gear system. You'll have access to plenty of basic weapons like assault rifles, carbines, sniper rifles, and handguns, but that's only scratching the surface. Beyond those simpler options, you'll be able to wield incredibly unique ones like ice guns, energy rifles, plasma crossbows, junk beams, kunai knives, power fists, and a freaking bolter for crying out loud. And that doesn't even cover everything that's in the game. There are so many different selections to choose from, and after more than 15 hours and dozens of runs, I still haven't had a chance to try all of the different weapons I've seen pop up. No matter your playstyle, there's bound to be a couple of options you'll gravitate towards, and the best part is that all of them are viable. Whether you enjoy smashing your enemies to bits with your fists, and slicing them to ribbons with a chainsaw, sneakily sniping them from afar with bows and rifles, or spraying them down with a tide of elemental death in the form of flamethrowers or energy discs, the weapon variety on offer is staggering, and every single option feels distinct and enjoyable to use. Bullets, arrows, energy projectiles. No matter what your armament of choice shoots out, it looks, feels, and sounds great. Each weapon's visual and audio feedback feels just right, and combined with the stylistic cartoon-esque accents that appear on screen each time you shoot a projectile, hit an enemy, or reload your weapon, Gunplay is a sensory feast. There are also various weapon rarities that scale as you delve deeper into each attempt. And the higher a weapon's tier, the more bonuses it will feature, and the better those buffs will be. You'll graduate from white and green weapons to blues and purples as you battle further into the lair of your enemy, and there are some truly wild combos waiting to be discovered. My personal favorite was the Tesla rifle, an energy weapon dealing shock damage that cascades between nearby enemies, allowing you to clear out mobs almost effortlessly. Speaking of shock damage, your armory opens up even more thanks to a system of affixes and alt-fire modes, various perks and stat bonuses that further customize your builds, along with secondary methods of engaging with the game's combat. You might pick up a seemingly mundane assault rifle, only to discover that it deals burn damage, has ricochet rounds that bounce between opponents, and an alt-fire mode that shoots out grenades or energy explosions. And that's just a single combination. The sheer scale of this diversity truly becomes apparent once you grasp just how many combinations and playstyles the system facilitates. I would often come across multiple weapons during a single run worth basing an entire build around. You never know what amazing item you're going to pick up next, and how it might combine with one of the two guns already on your robotic person to devastating effect. Despite its massive arsenal of weapons, Roboquest's build crafting gets even deeper thanks to an understandable yet engaging class system. The game features 6 distinct classes, each with its own abilities and upgrades to discover as you spend more time with them. You begin as the tanky Guardian, who makes use of a deployable shield and special melee attack that provides extra healing orbs when taking down enemies and damaging bosses. But that's only the start. As you progress through each run, you'll periodically level up by taking down more and more enemies. In addition to increasing your health pool, each new level presents a decision regarding your class's abilities, such as buffing ones you've already acquired or adding additional perks to your arsenal. These feature a wide variety of options, from upgrades to your base abilities, transforming them into powerful alternate versions, or improvements to general stats like armor, movement speed, and reload quickness. These selections and improvements allow you to further tailor your class towards a preferred playstyle. My favorite robotic combatant was the Commando, who came equipped with powerful rockets that dealt massive chunks of damage and an arm-mounted shotgun that could be further customized using this upgrade system. After experimenting over the course of many runs, my build of choice combined a shotgun blast that marked enemies and exposed them to increased damage, along with buffed rockets that allowed for higher DPS against bosses, transforming me into a formidable solo damage dealer. Other class options include the Engineer, which deploys support drones during combat, Recon, which teleports around the battlefield, Ranger, focused on invisibility, and Elementalist, a final secret option based around elemental damage that I still haven't unlocked yet. Outside of your starter Guardian, each class is unlocked either by discovering hidden secrets scattered throughout different levels, or by completing various challenges, which is a great touch and gives you something to chase down during the early hours and endgame. If you ever feel stuck, or just a little too comfortable with the class you're currently playing, slap on another and it will breathe a breath of fresh air into the experience right away. With such a massive arsenal of weapons and abilities to choose from, it's only fitting for Roboquest to pit you against fearsome enemies and bosses that will test your mettle, and it doesn't disappoint there either, for the most part. Enemy variety is generally solid across the board, with each zone featuring its own mix of standard enemy types combined with others specific to that location. Fittingly dubbed bad bots, these range from basic enemies who lob lasers and grenades from afar, reality-phasing ninjas that pop in and out to slice and dice you, plus turrets that shoot projectiles, generate shields for their allies, or spawn more enemies until you destroy them. And that's barely scratching the surface. The spread of opponents, ranging from cannon fodder to formidable elites, is more than enough to keep combat feeling fresh and require top-level performance to stay alive and facing down their onslaught, especially on higher difficulty levels. Roboquest's boss design is also solid, albeit less so than that of its rank-and-file enemies, surprisingly. Early zone bosses in particular are a mixed bag. One features some underground digging mechanics to spice things up, while the other two are largely stationary, and either stay planted in position while using AoE attacks, or chase you around the arena with slow-moving projectiles and melees, all of which are easily avoidable using your prolific movement skill set. Despite the minimalistic mechanics of these initial big baddies, they still pose a solid challenge even on standard difficulty. Things do scale up quite a bit later on, and it would admittedly be unwise to crank the difficulty too high with those early encounters. As you progress into the mid, late, and final boss stages, their design is greatly improved, offering a variety of challenges that combine fearsome attacks with environmental dangers to keep you on your toes. During my first few runs, I often struggled against even the mid-game bosses, thanks to a combination of impressive arena design, how does fighting a giant caterpillar while zooming around on a roller coaster sound, and more difficult and varied attack patterns to contend with. Later bosses continue this trend of marrying environmental hazards with deadly attacks to keep you on your toes, and I found them to be thoroughly enjoyable, despite the notable challenge that they posed. I don't want to spoil the game's final boss fight, but it's an impressive showdown that throws a deluge of deadly attacks and mechanics your way that will quickly overwhelm anyone heading into the fight unprepared. While not the greatest roguelite boss I've ever faced, it was more than enough to leave me on the edge of my seat with adrenaline pumping after finally conquering my first full run. And I immediately found myself looking forward to our next duel later down the line. On top of the weapons and abilities used to take down these bosses and their minions, you also have access to various vendors as you grind out each run, and they will quickly become a key resource to call on as you seek to extend your current excursion into enemy territory. You'll reach certain safe areas at different points during each run, and in addition to letting you catch your breath, heal up, and regroup, they also provide access to several vendors supplied by your buddy Max. One provides a selection of new weapons to peruse, another offers random upgrades like buffs to your stats, and a final companion can upgrade your currently equipped guns if you want to carry them forward. All of these come with the price tag, however, that you will pay in power cells. These blue battery-looking items are dropped by enemies you take down and provided in bulk at the end of each arena based on your performance. This forces you to confront the difficult question: what matters more? Should I upgrade my current weapons at the risk I might find an even better option in the very next room? The same goes for purchasing a new gun or selecting an upgrade that you could end up finding later for free. Despite these dilemmas, make sure to spend your power cells during each run, as they won't carry over should you fall victim to your evil robot enemies. In addition to the randomized help these vendors provide, there are also permanent upgrades to grind out back at your base camp. These do carry over across all your subsequent attempts after they've been unlocked, and provide a huge swath of different benefits. Ranging from basic improvements like increased health when leveling up, to buffing the rarity of weapons you'll encounter, to even more specific bonuses like the ability to reroll perk choices if none that appear during a given upgrade opportunity appeal to you. These benefits are unlocked by collecting wrenches during each of your runs, a currency acquired by progressing speedily through each area while uncovering its secrets and defeating enemies. At the end of each segment, you'll be given a grade, based on those factors combined with your chosen difficulty, and the higher your score, the more wrenches you'll be rewarded with. When each run ends, you'll be returned to your base camp where you can turn in these wrenches to acquire more upgrades. Rinse and repeat until you've acquired every possible benefit, which will take quite a while as there are plenty to unlock. There are so many different upgrades to grind out, with the associated costs scaling as you progress further down the line. While later selections do require significantly more resources to acquire, this system never feels oppressive or overtuned in a player-unfriendly way. As if there wasn't enough to explore already, Roboquest's levels are chock full of secrets to uncover, gadgets to unearth, and collectibles to, well, collect, that add another extra layer to unravel. Right from the start, these levels awe you with their design, and each gameplay space is unique and beautiful in its own right. Beyond their looks, these arenas are perfectly constructed for the battles that take place within them, offering various methods for both horizontal and vertical traversal that will allow you to zoom through each section while gunning down the enemies in your way. Their excellent design isn't limited to combat encounters either. Several subsections feature non-combat mechanics to enhance your exploration, or hit you with alternative objectives to complete, including a heart-pounding time trial to escape a massive explosion, or tracking down various mini-bosses or corrupted zones to clear out. These corrupted environments are some of the coolest in the game, which is saying something, and also feature the best musical scores to accompany their fearsome enemies and dark mysteries. You'll encounter many environmental challenges during your robotic romps. These feature traversal puzzles that, while starting out fairly basic, scale up in complexity alongside combat difficulty in later areas, offering some serious danger to contend with if you're intent on exploring every nook and cranny. I'd often find myself torn between exploring these areas or passing them up deeper into my runs, as the prospect of losing huge chunks of my health if I messed up those puzzles was quite daunting when thinking ahead to the enemies I still had to defeat. Despite their impressive variety, you will start to familiarize yourself with the various zones fairly early on. That being said, their randomized layouts help keep you on your toes throughout repeat runs, and you'll soon be breezing through whatever configuration gets thrown your way while becoming the ultimate robotic menace. Those enemies aren't the only thing waiting for you out in the wilds, though. During my very first run, I began uncovering secrets and encountering mysterious characters looking for my help. This also included content that, while locked off to me in those early hours, was clearly meant to be revisited later. There are plenty of cool hidden items to discover and acquire through various means. Some unlock new classes, while others add gadgets to your inventory. Gadgets are unique abilities and stat bonuses that are permanent across each run and can be activated or deactivated at your discretion. There are also 6 power crystals to obtain, each of which adds a unique spin that switches up the flow of your runs, and can also be turned on and off at will. Finally, there are various NPCs hidden throughout the game's levels that will offer their assistance and knowledge for a price, which often involves completing a specific task for them. These short little quests often involve locating an item and then returning to that character later to deliver it. Thankfully, these objects will stick with you even after death, so don't worry about missing out on extra content if you get taken down with one on your person. With so many secrets out there waiting to be found, exploration is definitely rewarded. Sometimes you'll want to focus purely on combat and speed, while others will have you taking your time, checking every corner, ledge, and cave for hidden gems you may have missed while rushing through your last attempt. After 15 hours, I barely scratched the surface of what the game's exploration has to offer, and knowing there are even more environments out there that I haven't seen yet is a tantalizing prospect. This review wouldn't be complete without discussing two final aspects of Roboquest: its co-op functionality and various levels of difficulty. When it comes to co-op, I'll be completely honest. I haven't dipped my toes into that side of the game. I'm a die-hard solo player, through and through, and unless I'm absolutely forced to team up with other humans, you'll pretty much never catch me playing with anyone other than myself. And this applies to Roboquest as well. That being said, while I didn't try out the game's co-op mode, I imagine it's quite a bit of fun. Blasting around with a second robot buddy, each player running different classes and weapons that synergize to unleash maximum mayhem on your enemies, sounds like an absolute blast. And, in a move I appreciate as a solo player, Rise Up has included co-op matchmaking straight from the base camp, allowing you to join up with a friend you know, or someone you don't, should the urge to tag team hit you at any point in time. Finally, I need to touch on difficulty, as the level at which you play the game holds a surprising amount of sway over how much you'll enjoy the Roboquest experience. After completing the tutorial, I was advised to start playing on hard, which I did, and was initially taken aback by how easy things seemed. Then, I reached the second set of arenas and ran into a brick wall. Not unusual for a roguelite, but the difficulty scaling in place was noticeably harsh. I spent a few hours trying out new builds and switching up my playstyle, but continued to struggle, so I toned things down to the standard difficulty to see how that would go. This made things noticeably easier, even during those later encounters, so out of curiosity, I decided to tone things down even further, and this simply broke the game. At the second easiest setting, enemies would stand around in a haze, not even bothering to attack while I sliced through them effortlessly. Mobs, bosses, nothing could stop me, or even make me break the slightest of sweats. This completely trivialized the entire gameplay loop, and I immediately kicked the difficulty back up, knowing I would never drop it that low again. I would almost never recommend dipping below standard difficulty under any circumstances, regardless of how much you might be struggling to make it through your first full completion. Roguelite and FPS veterans should feel comfortable starting out on hard, while standard suits most newcomers just fine, and you can adjust from there as needed. Yes, this can be a difficult game, and yes, you will need to put in the time and effort to familiarize yourself with its spaces, enemy design, arsenal, and boss mechanics if you want to be successful. But Roboquest is a much better experience when following that approach, instead of compromising its core so badly that it doesn't feel like the same game. In a year that's given us titles like Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Starfield, and more, games that can soak up dozens, even hundreds of hours quite easily, hopping into Roboquest was a breath of fresh air. Not because it can't suck you in for dozens of hours. Trust me, it can. But because it provides a bite-sized experience that you can pop into and out of without a second thought. Towards the end of my play sessions, I'd often tell myself, okay, just one more run. And then I'd glance at the clock only to realize an hour had flown by in what felt like minutes. And that is a testament to the excellent product that Rise Up has delivered. One of the beautiful things about roguelites is that they often leave you feeling fulfilled after just an hour of gameplay, regardless of whether you successfully completed a run or never even came close during that particular session. Roboquest's progression systems, complex gear, excellent level, enemy, and boss design, along with next-level visual and audio presentation, all come together to form a small yet mighty experience in the best possible way. If I haven't sold you on it already, you're probably wondering whether Roboquest is worth not only your time, but your money as well. And that's a perfectly reasonable question, especially in a year where many gamers' wallets have already been bled dry by an unbelievably stacked lineup of releases. Let me settle that debate for you right now with a resounding yes, Roboquest is worth both. Is Roboquest worth its $25 price tag on the platform of your choice? Yes. Is it worth downloading through Game Pass if you subscribe to that service? Absolutely. As a hardcore roguelite fan, a newcomer to the genre, or someone who's somewhere in the middle, is Roboquest worth giving a shot? Yes, yes, and yes again. With an excellent price point and undeniable value, I can't recommend Roboquest enough for anyone and everyone with even a passing interest in what the game has to offer. Rise Up Studios deserves all the kudos for putting out such a fantastic product after plenty of early access feedback. And I hope they've got more planned for Roboquest in the future, because this franchise has certainly earned its time in the spotlight. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know your thoughts on Roboquest or your own favorite roguelite in the comments below. You're a real one, and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.